Hi, I'm Eric Poulin.
And I'm Robin Poulin.
We're the co-founders of Calendar Budget, and welcome to the Calendar Budget podcast.
I can pay cash, I can pay check, I can pay wire transfer, I can pay gift card, I can pay credit, I can pay anything you like. I can pay cash, I can pay check, I can pay wire transfer, I can pay gift card, I can pay credit, I can pay anything you like.
Okay, today we're going to be talking about educating children and what are the benefits of education, why kids should get educated in the first place.
They think they're smart already, don't they?
Too smart, unfortunately.
Sometimes too smart for their own good.
Well, that's teenagers. Well, we'll get to that. I think we're gonna start talking about kids that are a little bit younger in age. Mm-hmm. The point of the topic of education really is, in almost every case, education directly correlates with your income level. So the more educated you are, the more income you'll tend to have. Mm-hmm. There's lots of statistics on that if you want to Google them. We looked some up quite some time ago, and we did actually refresh just a little bit before recording today. But last time I looked it up, they were like, if you got a bachelor's degree versus high school, the bachelor's degree is going to make almost twice as much over a lifetime than a person who just has a high school diploma. And of course, increasing that to like professional degrees, like a PhD or higher, some professional degree of some kind, will just increase it more.
It seems to differentiate a bit too if you break it down between male and female. The most recent stuff I looked up was from Stats Canada, and their record was from 2015, reported in 2017. And I believe they were saying it for a women bachelor's degree earns 80% more than, what was it?
Than high school?
Yeah, I think it was through high school, than a high school degree, or
Well,
than an
that's-
apprenticeship. And 60% more than high school and 40% more than a college diploma.
Okay, so that's very similar to what I looked up. Mine was 100% more. Again, this is over a lifetime. This is not a snapshot in time.
Yeah.
So, of course, there is interest in making more money, and education is definitely a way to get there. Couple of ways that an education helps. Obviously, with a degree or some kind of education, you're going to typically start at a higher salary than if you don't. But also your ability to grow that salary or grow your income over time with a career, like with a degree, with education, just makes more sense. It's going to grow a lot faster.
Yeah, and the Stats Canada information was saying just that. Over time, the percentage of growth is much faster when you have a degree as opposed to having just high school diploma.
And my guess is that in the United States, that statistic would be more exacerbated.
Yeah.
Because I think in the US, there's a wider gap between education levels than there is in Canada. Not that it's that much different, but it's just a little bit wider. So, these are obvious reasons why an education makes a big difference, why you want to encourage your children to have an education. Their career and their life with that is going to be so much better, not simply just because of the money, but an education brings ability to have more interesting discussions and more culture, and just it broadens your horizons in ways that nothing else can.
I remember actually the difference it made for myself with education, that I felt more confident and more organized in my understanding, and ability to learn was increased as well, because there was some learning skills that I gained during my college education.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the main features of an education is learning how to learn. That's really what you're going to get out of a modern education these days. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we get into the things today. But that discussion about with higher education comes higher income. There are exceptions to that, so I just wanted to point that out. With entrepreneurs out there, most of the leaders of the really big companies are college dropouts, like the Mark Zuckerbergs of the world, and kind of tech leaders tend to be dropouts, not because they're not educated, but because they probably just don't need the education. But it's also, in a business where it's an idea whose time has come, as it's said, those businesses are going to take off regardless, and your education level really isn't going to change that. So if you do have an entrepreneurial minded kid, it's not always the best idea, in my opinion, to push them so hard to stay in school instead of going out and forming a company, because that is an education unto itself. Running a startup, huge learning curve, a lot of education going on there, and it's very valuable. And I mean, like I said, that can be the very top echelon of income.
That's something we discussed early on in our marriage, was the idea of getting a bachelor's degree for you with computer programming. The idea was, if you want to continue going up the ladder, become CEO or something like that, then that's quite valuable to have that bachelor's degree. But where we wanted to go was, we wanted to go to entrepreneurship. So we knew that ongoing education would be more beneficial than getting a bachelor's degree at that point. That it was learn what you needed as it came along.
Yeah, it was a master's degree, just to clarify.
Thank you.
I already had my bachelor's at that point. But yeah, having a foundation, if you're going to be working at a job, like for a company, a lot of them won't even accept you if you don't have, first of all, high school diploma, mandatory for almost every job of any kind of significance.
Yeah, our kids are finding that right now.
Yeah, exactly.
The younger ones want to get a better job, and well, you haven't finished your high school yet, so.
Yeah, precisely. But it also makes a big difference to have a degree. So if you want to get into certain jobs, like professional type jobs, you need that bachelor's degree. Or if you're getting into a trade, then you need the apprenticeship or whatever it is that comes along with the job that you're applying for. But again, not everybody's going to apply for a job. Some people are going to found companies and be very successful doing that. And again, that's a whole education unto itself.
Yeah, everybody learns differently. We found that each of our kids had learned differently. Some are very analytical and love diving into things. Others need more hands-on, being creative, and the teachers appreciated that. There was one teacher in particular that helped one of our kids, that they saw that they were a hands-on type of student and allowed them to do like this 3D modeling out of cake to create a cell with gummy worms and all these other things. And it was really cool to watch that child come alive with education.
Yeah, education, of course, comes with a cost. That's the big question around it. So yes, it pays off in the long run, but getting there can be a huge challenge. Mm-hmm. If you're getting an education, you're running anywhere from like a 1-year post-secondary diploma of some kind, all the way through to like an 8-year PhD and ongoing training with professional certifications and what have you. Mm-hmm. So the cost of this education can be very expensive. It depends on what you're doing. In a traditional case, you're going to go to college, you're going to go to university, and you have to pay the tuition to go to these institutions to learn. Mm-hmm. And that's very expensive. And it varies wildly from one school to another, from program to program, right? We have a daughter in a practical nursing program at a community college. And then we have another daughter who was studying at university for applied mathematics. And the applied mathematics one at the university was almost 2 times the tuition per semester of mm-hmm. the college one. And what are they getting more for that money? Different education, I guess. It's just wildly different.
Yet to see.
And if you go, of course, to, community college versus the Harvards of the world, not only is it competitive getting accepted, that's a whole different story, but the tuition there is exceedingly high because they attract some of the best teachers, and they have a prestigious institution, and a degree from Harvard means more than a degree from Joe local college.
Which makes it easier to get a job later on.
And grow.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. But you have this conundrum when you're getting started. If you don't come from wealth, how do you pay for the education? Because we all agree getting it is valuable, but getting there can be challenging. And that's why they have student loans. But there's more to consider than just the tuition amount, right? For many people, this is the kid's first time living away from home. Mm-hmm. If they can go to a local school and are living at home, like, all the better, because that'll reduce housing and food and a whole bunch of other costs, transportation.
Yeah.
But in many cases, you're going to have to travel to go to the school that you want to, which means, okay, yeah, there's the tuition. Sometimes there's international fees, so they charge a lot more if you're an international student. They'll just double the price because they can. Why not? We live in Canada, and we have a lot of people here coming from the Philippines, Nigeria, India, wherever, and they have to pay an international fee, and it feels like it's 5x the regular cost of tuition. It's crazy. I don't know how they can afford it, to be honest. It's difficult for the local residents to afford it. So yeah, there's fees like that, but then there's housing, right? The student has to live somewhere. There's often on-campus boarding or housing available. There's food plans, or they can just get their own food, but all things that need to be budgeted, and you can't live on just
ramen noodles. You can't live on just books and tuition and food. Like, you need to have some entertainment. You're a human being, right? You got to have a little bit more fun. Although partying, another thing that costs money and can be a distraction. Parents don't want to talk about that, but it's a reality. May as well just face it and plan for the student to be successful. Now, student loans, we're not going to get into detail about the process of student loans, because it's for every country it's different, for every school it's a little different, but every school has a department that helps with finance. So you approach that location and see what department they have there, and they'll help you figure out the ins and outs of all that.
Yeah, it'll be the financial aid department. Every school will have one. First, figure out what school you're going to go to, and once you're accepted, you can work with the financial aid office to work out a student loan. Now, you don't always qualify for a student loan. If you make a certain amount of money, you won't qualify for a student loan, because they'll expect you, the parents, to fund your education, like your children's education. Unless you have extenuating circumstances, blah, 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 which is why I work with that financial aid office to work it out. But these loans, student loans, can be a burden to pay off for many, many years. It's not uncommon to hear people paying off student loans 10 years after they graduate. So that can be a problem. So something to just be wary of and plan for, because this thing isn't going to disappear just after your education. It's you're borrowing money for the education, and then your education needs to pay it off with your job. And of course, you run into problems where, the kid graduates and then they can't find a job in their field. So that further complicates the issue. Anyway, lots of things to consider with student loans, because it can be very, very expensive. Now, there are government programs that can help. Often government programs can help with student loans, but they'll help with saving for education, which is best to start at what age?
When they're infant, when they're born.
As soon as they're born, get started on saving. A lot of government programs in the U.S., a 529 plan. In Canada, RESP plan, Registered Education Savings Plan.
Yep.
These are going to provide you with tax-sheltered savings vehicles for your kids' education.
When we first started with our kids, for a period of time, it was invest this amount of money and we'll match up to a certain amount. And so that was even free money again. that the government was supporting education for our children.
Yeah, in many cases that will still be the case. So there in Canada, there's the CSG, Canada Savings Grant. I think that's what it's called. It's specific for education anyway. Every time you save X amount, the government will kind of match it as a grant up to a certain amount per year, which, you know, that helps you build a base. And again, if you're starting when the kid is very, very young, like just born, you have 18 years or whatever, how many years for that money to take advantage of the rule of 72 and start doubling over time, because it is an investment.
And if you have family that wants to be able to support their grandkids or their niece and nephew, whatever, you can always say, hey, they have a plan for their education. You can donate to that if you want to be able to support them for birthdays or anything else that comes up.
Yeah, instead of getting them another toy or another gift,
Yeah.
you can give them the gift of a future education. The kid might not love you for that until they're older because they don't see the toy. But, you know,
When they're infants, they don't know any better.
when they're infants, they won't know. If they're under age 4, they'll never know.
Yeah.
There's other forms of financial assistance as well, in the form of scholarships, grants, bursaries, endowments, and there's lots of different names for these various different kind of sources of money that are available. So do your research, have a look around and see what your student might qualify for. You know, if they have good grades, they may qualify for the scholarship, but you don't always have to have just good grades. Sometimes you can just write an essay.
Yeah.
And it's like a competitive essay if your kid's good at writing, or if they're good at, sometimes there's art contests, there's whatever. If your company, maybe sometimes you belong to a union and your union gives some kind of scholarship or grant. You know, look into all of these options and see what's available.
I heard things over the years where there's a number of the scholarships that just aren't used because they aren't applied for. So go ahead and apply for as many as possible and help your child to work hard in the first place, that they qualify for these scholarships or grants based on their education level and their abilities already. And if they're willing to work hard for it, it shows the college and university that they are able to work hard to accomplish these things.
Also, when they're in school, when they do their tax returns, they will be able to claim at least a portion of their education expenses, specifically the tuition amount, possibly other things. You know, work with your accountant on that. But that claim can reduce the amount of taxes that you have to pay and sometimes result in a tax return. And if you, the parents, are paying for the student's tuition, they will still have to claim it, but they can transfer that credit to you in many cases. So, you know, again, work that out with your bookkeeper or accountant, tax preparation person. They'll help you figure out what that means. Now, in terms of which program to go for, you know, if you go into
That's the big question.
If you go into, like, where our daughter, practical nursing, there's a huge demand for that and it pays decently. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you go to some other program like history, you know, get a PhD in history, what are you gonna do with that? I don't know, other than teach. Like, you got to have your eyes on what is this going to turn into in the long run. Mm-hmm.
One of our daughters was investigating and studying astrophysics, but they found in Canada the best job that you can get is with the government, and the government isn't paying as well for that field. So they have been looking into the US as well, where they're still continuing their education right now, and see that there's far more opportunity in the US. So it depends on where in the world you're going to work, what opportunity there is for you.
Yeah, in most cases, you're going to get an education, and then, you know, every little kid thinks they're just going to get a job near their house, right? And live happily ever after with their parents. But obviously that's not the case. Many people will get an education and then they're going to get a job somewhere in the world. It could be very remote from where they grew up. Mm-hmm. So you don't have to plan to live exactly near where you grew up, or don't plan for your kids to necessarily do that. much as you might want them to stay near the nest forever, it's not a practical reality. What we're doing is we're planning that our kids are probably going to live all over the map, and we're trying to budget enough money to be able to travel to visit them regularly. So that's what we're thinking of. You'll come up with a plan that's suitable for you. Now, as you're trying to figure out the right program, don't go entirely based on what the potential earnings is. So this is a mistake that our daughter did. Even though we warned her about it, she chose the field that she was interested in, not entirely based on this, but a lot of it was based on what's going to have the highest potential earning after she graduates in a job. So she just looked up, the highest paying jobs, and then reverse calculated, oh, this is the highest paying job, and this is the education I need. Sign me up for that. But then she found out when she got in the program that she hated the program, and it dropped out of the program. Not because she couldn't keep up, but just she didn't like it. Didn't like the work at all.
Just couldn't connect with it.
Yeah, like if you don't, your happiness. So education is correlated with income, not correlated with happiness. In fact, sometimes there's a negative correlation about the process of going through an education with happiness, because it is a struggle to get through any education, even if you're like highly motivated about it. But if you're not motivated about it, then you're just slogging through just to finish the program and you hate it. Like if you hate the program, you're probably going to hate the field as well. So why would you get a job in that when you're done? It just doesn't make any sense. So
It might not be 100% that way. So anything you can do to find experience in that field before you even get in the education, that's a win-win for you, because now you can see if you really like that type of field and what the people are like, what education is needed. It will encourage you. When you get to the education, you're finding it hard, you'll have something to encourage you to keep motivated, to keep going.
yeah, we were referred to by a friend a movie called The Three Idiots. Remember this movie?
That was awesome.
All is
I
well.
love it. Yes, all is well.
This movie is about it's based in India, so it's got like Indian music scenes in it and
subtitles and stuff.
and subtitles, and it's dubbed and everything. But it's a great movie nonetheless. It's about these people who all went into engineering. Only one of them really wanted to be in engineering. One of them wanted to be a photographer, and I forget the other one wanted to be something else. But they, were again slogging through the program, not getting the best grades that they wanted, but because their family wanted them to be engineers, they just felt the pressure of that, and then were hating their lives. And then they kind of came to an awakening by the end of the movie and stopped doing that program and did what they were passionate about, and suddenly they were happy with their life. So think about this. Do you want your child to be rich, or do you want them to be happy? Maybe you don't always have to choose between those two things, but if you did, hopefully you're going to choose happiness for your children, which means as they're growing up, encourage them to pursue the things that they're passionate about, right? Don't force them into something that they may be less or dispassionate about, because it's not going to be a fulfilling life. Even if they end up making a ton of money, you can't buy happiness with money, as we've mentioned before. You want a career that's going to give you enough to support your needs and some of your wants, but you're going to be spending so much of your life doing work in this career. You better pick one that you like, because nobody wants to do stuff for 8 hours a day that they hate. That's a good way to be depressed and unhappy.
Try variety. And some people end up changing their job a few times in their life, because that's the opportunities available these days, where education is easily connected to and you can change your career.
Yeah, in fact, I heard a study recently that said, back in the day, in our parents' generation, it was very common for somebody to graduate from school, get a job at a company, and then stay at that company for their entire life.
Yeah.
Or if they switched companies, it would be a lateral shift to another job in the same field. But typically they would kind of stay in that job category for their whole life. Nowadays, that's really not common. It's very, very common for people to shift careers entirely 2, 3, even 4 times in their lifetime. And so another way to look at schooling and education is you're not necessarily getting trained for a specific career or a specific vertical, although you are, and of course you want some of that. You're really getting a foundation of basic knowledge, and you're learning how to learn so that you can, again, pick up new skills, you can try new things, and when you have your midlife crisis and you want to try something else, you want to like drop out of your career and you know, if you're a doctor and you just want to be an artist, great. You can make that shift. And hopefully with some of the other stuff we talked about in this podcast, you'll be financially ready for that as well and not just have a career burnout and then be in trouble.
We actually have a doctor friend that did stuff like that. He has a few different interests now. He has a entrepreneurial effort. He's a retired doctor, and he has like 2 or 3 other things on the go as well. Maybe even more. I don't remember now. A while ago,
it's all over the map. Does airsoft. He has military vehicles, like a collection of military vehicles that he rents out to movie studios. Like very
it's just fascinating talking
wildly
to him.
Different stuff.
Yeah,
and he loves it. He loves it way more than his medical practice.
Now, back when our kids were small, we saw this TED Talk, and this guy was an English professor at a college or university, and he was saying that the education program it's hard to be able to educate people for jobs that are going to exist 5 years from now. They don't even exist yet. So the only thing that you can do is teach children how to learn.
Yeah, exactly. And as you're trying to figure out what's the right thing to pursue, as you're trying to discover your passions, this is where things like co-op programs in schools can help. It'll give you a little taste and you can see if this might be something you're interested in. Part-time jobs will give you a taste of things and see if you're interested. Try different things. You know, don't always work at fast food restaurants, for example. Try different things. When I was young, I worked in fast food. I knew that I would never do that again. I worked in shipping receiving, which was good work, but it wasn't for me. But it was actually really good experience, and I've used that experience many times in my life. And I tried various different things. I tried doing a little bit of technical repair. I tried a little bit of entrepreneurship, and finally discovered my passion and pursued that. But if you don't try these different things, you could just get, slotted into a quote unquote factory job that just because you didn't choose something else and life chose for you. You want to be somebody that acts and is not acted upon. You'll be much happier.
Yep. Act smart, act wise, and do act work hard. The effort makes a difference.
Now, trades versus profession. So we have a daughter right now the one who went to university and dropped out because she didn't like it. She's now considering going back to do trades. She took some time off school. She just got, a job at a shipper receiver company and is now considering doing trades because she's getting a little bit more experience with working with her hands. And she decided, you know what? I don't like all this sitting in a classroom doing math all day. I don't like the cerebral work. I like working with my hands. And so trade, might be something more up her alley. And there's nothing wrong with that, A lot of parents that are educated feel like trades is a degrading, not degrading, but I don't know how to say it. It's like a lesser form of career. And that's just not the case.
Yeah.
All work is honorable. And as long as you're doing something that contributes to society, makes you happy, and provides you with enough means to support your family,
On the right side of the law?
then good on you. Of course, on the right side of the law.
Yeah.
You know, be moral about your choices here.
Yeah.
But as long as you're doing that, the key to life is to be happy.
Mm-hmm.
And again, as long as you, in most cases, a job is going to provide you with enough income. As long as you don't squander that income. So again, all the stuff that we've talked about in this, all our episodes of our podcast about how to save and how to budget and how to, you know, just take care of your finances, all super important stuff. If you pick a low paying job or a high paying job, you can still function perfectly fine in either of these. And it just means you need to, it doesn't mean if you get a high paying job, you don't need to budget. You still do. And if you get a low paying job, you need to budget too. It's important to always make sure that you're doing the right things for your finances. And when you do that, you can focus on being happy and not have to worry about the money.
There's people that have been making millions a year and they still end up claiming bankruptcy because they haven't managed their money well. So education and good money management principles, stick to them.
Yeah, exactly. Now, when you get an education, you can keep on going, right? Like you can get a bachelor's, then you can get a master's, and then you can get a PhD. And at some point, depending on the career path you're on, there may come a point of diminishing returns, meaning that I could devote 2 more years of study, and is that really going to get me what I want? You know, I faced that same dilemma as I was working at IBM and had a bachelor's at the time, and I started doing a master's degree, and then I really, as I was in the middle of the just the first course of the master's degree, thinking of the time that I'm now spending away from my family studying. You know, these are my young children that, you know, I'm hardly spending any time with. And I'm starting to really think about, there's a huge trade-off here. You know, how much benefit is this education going to give me versus the cost of me not being with my family? Mm-hmm. And even as I considered, even if I eliminated the family out of the consideration, the benefit of doing this little bit of education was really minimal. Because once you're in a profession, your performance matters a ton more than any education. Like a ton more. If you stand out because you're passionate about what you do and you perform well, that matters way more than a master's or PhD. And so just consider how much value is this education going to really add to your life, especially when you consider all the effort and time and money that's going to have to go into it. There was no money, as it turned out, in this case, because my company sponsored me to do this program. So sometimes if you can find that, all the better.
Yeah.
But even if that's the case, there's a ton of time and energy that's going to take to get through the education. And is it going to get you where you want to go versus, you know, you could be spending that time with family or on a hobby or just getting better at what you do on your own. Like, you can cherry pick little pieces of education, like with YouTube and just electronic learning. Like there's courses online now you can take for a specific thing.
Udemy, great resource, or even MIT, I find they have some sort of resource that allows you to investigate their courses that are available. And it's something that we consulted on when we were making this decision. We made it together and said, okay, what's important for our family?
Yeah, there's tons of free education out there and paid programs that are like way less cost than a college or university. So consider what value is this degree or whatever going to actually provide to you. For many trades and services, you need certifications and such. So, you know, get those things that are mandatory to do your job. But after that, really consider what's the value of it. Unless you're just getting education for the passion of being educated. Like I've thought about going back to school just for the fun of it.
Yeah, we love learning.
But no, who has time? Who has time? Not me.
As for the trades, I find that there's a lot of sponsorship going on for the trades right now, because the people that were in the trades are starting to age out, retire, or pass away, and they need to fill those roles. There's not enough people to help keep the electrical, plumbing, and everything going. That they need more people in, so they're starting to sponsor the education in those areas.
Yeah, when you're getting started, programs like that can be tremendously helpful. Over the course of a career, you're going to have to continue your education. Whatever you learned in high school or trade school or college, university is going to be vastly insignificant compared to what your educational needs will be across your career. So you're going to have to continue learning regardless. But it might not be in a formal setting where you're sitting down in a classroom and getting a degree. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you're going to go to specific classes for a week or two for upgrading skills, or maybe you're just learning. As a software developer, I spend a tremendous amount of my time learning, but I'm not usually going to a class or even going through a full course. Usually I'm cherry picking a piece of information that I need, but I'm able to consume that because of the base that I got from university. Mm-hmm. So that's where that ability to learn how to learn is super important. So that lifelong learning is going to happen. And if you have found yourself in a bit of a rut and you haven't done any learning lately, maybe it's time to go back and just revisit what skills do you need to develop a little bit. It doesn't even need to be related to your career. It can just be related to a hobby. There's a lot of satisfaction that comes from lifelong learning.
Look for a mentor, somebody that you see is doing fairly well in that area, that has the skills, or maybe a few mentors that you can follow along and learn skills from their example, or even have a good discussion with them and say, hey, how did you get to where you are now? What can I do to move from where I am to get to the next level?
Exactly. In the end, an education is going to pay you back time and time again. So it's definitely worth the value and the effort of getting that kind of base level. And lifelong learning is going to happen whether you like it or not. So embrace it rather than kick against it, because it can be very satisfying.
I have a question. How early should the kids start considering then what education they should be looking into? When do they start looking into that?
What do you mean?
Like grade 6, grade 10?
Like what career they want to pursue?
And what college and universities and stuff would help them?
I mean, I think a parent should be involved with monitoring the passions of their children from as early as they can and see what triggers and what picks up. Mm-hmm. If they try soccer and they love it, awesome. Can you make a career out of that? Some people can. A few people. But only a few. You'll start to pick up here and there what they're really passionate about, and then let them pursue that. At the end of the day, it should be the child's decision, not the parent's decision, what career that they go for and what education they go for. But again, as we discussed, you're going to be switching careers most likely many times throughout your life. So to some degree, it doesn't matter that, our daughter studied astrophysics. It doesn't mean she's going to be a rocket scientist. Mm-hmm. She could be a teacher. She could do anything. Once you have a degree, you can do anything. Mm-hmm. Because then you have that base to be able to continue on. And as for what age to start picking things, I mean, I wouldn't put it in a kid's head that they had to be a doctor or an engineer ever.
At least investigating.
Let them come to that conclusion. And I would be encouraging them to try different things.
Definitely. Find opportunities, whether it's after school programs or even the co-op programs like you were talking about. Go speak with the guidance counselor. I think that starts around grade 9, basically, when you have a guidance counselor available. And they'd be able to help the child identify their interests, their hobbies that fit with different careers, and identify what college and university programs fit with that, and where to go exactly, how to model their education to get the right prerequisites to get into the right programs, or even to connect with the right co-op position that's not going to be just a filler for extra courses, but a fulfilling and meaningful co-op position that will give them experience in the field that they of interest.
I would just add a caution to that, to not abdicate responsibility for helping your child find what they are passionate about and what they want to do to a guidance counselor. Many cases, guidance counselors are jaded in their jobs, and just like a teacher can be, you're not always going to get the best guidance counselor. Some of them are amazing, like all people, and some of them are not. Like it just depends. So don't put all of your dependency on guidance from third-party sources. Use your intuition as a parent. Watch and study and learn what your children are passionate about, and they'll show you what they're interested in. It'll be very manifest just by observing. So keep on looking. Get ready for an education. Start saving as early as you can. And again, an education is going to pay you over and over again. Happy budgeting.
I can pay cash, I can pay check, I can pay wire transfer, I can pay gift card, I can pay credit, I can pay anything you like. I can pay cash, I can pay check, I can pay wire transfer, I can pay gift card, I can pay credit, I can pay anything you like.